Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm going to mute myself and we're going to allow everybody a couple seconds to hop on, so don't mind the silence. All right, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining. You've tuned into the California SBDC Statewide Guidance webinar. This noon webinar is going to be on manufacturing. This morning already we covered hospitality and in-dining restaurants. Later we will be covering retail, logistics, and office workspaces. So my name is Katrina Smith. I'm the Associate Director for the Orange County Inland Empire Small Business Development Center. We have a wonderful group of panelists joining us today. We have Mike Hill, who's the Cal State Fullerton North Orange County SBDC Director. We also have two amazing consultants, Joseph Wino and Elena Champiner. And then we have Mike Curtis as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. The Small Business Development Center is funded by the SBA as well as the State of California Governor's Office for Business and Economic Development. I apologize. All of our resources are at no cost because we are your federal and state taxpayer dollars at work. So resources like these webinars, any one of our trainings, and really the core of what we do, the one-on-one consulting, is all at no cost. So if any one of you would like to speak with one of our expert consultants, please visit californiasbdc.org, or you can call that 1-800 number listed there. All of these webinars are being recorded, as well as the presentations are placed in a Dropbox link, which I will put in the chat. So please visit that if you would like to visit any one of those resources again. Or again, you could visit californiasbdc.org to find your local SBDC where we could pair you with an expert consultant to help you in your business. So with that, again, today we are going to be talking about the manufacturing industry, as well as going over the statewide guidances and checklists on how to reopen your business safely if you are in the manufacturing industry. So I'm going to turn it over to Joseph Wino. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katrina. And if I look like I'm sinking in my chair, I probably am. This chair has been with me for about 30 years, about as long as I established my first company. I am a business consultant at the California SBDC. I help my clients in a number of ways to start, grow, and succeed with their businesses. I generally find myself working on projects that entail new product development, kind of a broad omni-channel view of sales and distribution, manufacturing, as well as supply chain management. And before I get started with this webinar, I want to take a moment to frame it with you together, much in the same way, a photographer frames his or her subject. Experienced photographers, they always make it a point to familiarize themselves with their equipment, their subject, and they always write things down and refer to those things often. The purpose of this webinar, much in the same way, is to familiarize yourself with where to find the information and how to apply the state of California COVID-19 guidance as it relates to manufacturing. Our hope is that as a result of this webinar, you'll be equipped to plan, critically assess, and implement a proactive strategy that will allow you to operate a safe and clean environment for your employees and visitors. So with that, just like taking a photo, there are certain non-discretionary rules that you have to follow. You don't want to put your finger over the lens, and much in the same way, these non-discretionary requirements, regardless of your industry, have to be followed. And some of those requirements are, you want to perform or you need to perform a detailed risk assessment and implement a site-specific protection plan. You want to train your employees on how to limit the spread of COVID-19, train them to screen themselves for symptoms and stay at home, but by all means, stay at home if they don't feel well. You want to implement individual control measures and screenings. You want to implement disinfecting protocols, and you want to implement physical distancing guidelines. So where can we find this information? The state of California has done just an absolutely wonderful job of allowing us to find this information very easily. So the statewide industry resources can be found at the covid19.ca.gov website. And when you arrive there, you'll see a section that says featured services and information. There's a link that says industry guidance. If you click that link, you'll be taken to a list of industries, and in this case, manufacturing. And when you click manufacturing, there'll be a link that says guidance for the manufacturing industry in this case. So let's just look at this from the macro, kind of the big picture lens, if you will, for a moment. These are the two general resources that are provided. First is the Cal-OSHA guidance on requirements to protect workers. And the next is the CDC, which we've all heard about, the CDC interim guidance for employers responding to COVID-19. So these are the general resources. And again, California has done a wonderful job. So if we put on our kind of a micro lens, we have a clearer picture, or a clearer picture begins to emerge. And this is where we find the statewide industry resources and the COVID-19 checklist as it pertains to your specific industry. So the manufacturing guidance, it is information that you should refer to. And the manufacturing checklist, this actually could serve as your backbone or your foundation to create a written plan for your facility. So, if we use our micro lens again, we're ready to take that photo, and let's look through this lens together, shall we? So the manufacturing industry guidance is broken up into 5 specific areas. The first area is a worksite specific plan. The second area is employee training, very important in this case. Individual screening measures, our control and screening measures, your cleaning and disinfecting protocols, and of course your physical distancing guidelines. So first, let's talk about the subject of worksite specific plans. So there are really 3 key considerations here to build a worksite specific plan. And one is to establish a written COVID-19 plan, something that you can refer to often, given the nature of how COVID is evolving and changing. We need to be able to stay on top of guidance that has changed and provided by the state of California and update these plans. And it isn't something that you fill out and you just put in your desk and close away. No, this is something that you want to refer to often. It's critically important to the success of your business. We want to conduct a risk assessment of all work areas, and what we mean by this is look for the vulnerabilities in your business. Are there high traffic areas that you can mitigate and reduce? Are there areas that are, for example, in manufacturing where you share tools? Are there pickup and drop off areas that you can make, contactless? And above all this, you need someone to actually go out and make this plan work for you. So designate a person at each property to implement this plan and be responsible for it. And the key call out here is, regularly evaluate the workplace for compliance with the plan that you put in place. Document, correct, and amend the plan. So here's a general checklist. Again, you want to designate a person. You want to assess the risk. What are the vulnerabilities in your manufacturing facility? You want to train employees to respond and to comply with the plan. Again, you want to check for compliance, not only among your employees, but also that you're compliant with the guidelines that are set forth by the state of California. You want to correct any deficiencies. You want to know how to contact your local health department. And again, you want to continually update that plan and amend it based on changing guidance that you receive from the state of California. So, what are some industry insights? What's happening in the manufacturing industry? We want to evaluate our supply chain, and think about this. I mean, supply chain, how this flow works is not only within your business, but those products have to come from somewhere. And when they arrive at your facility, you want to make sure that you're taking the right steps to keep those items clean and sanitized before you actually take them out of the box and use them within your business. You want to mitigate those vulnerabilities by wiping down boxes, by removing the items from the box as quickly as possible, not leaving them on your dock doors. You want to put those boxes in recycling bins just as quickly as possible. And you want to communicate right, and you want to be transparent. Leadership is always, and it should be, a source of truth. So the second area we're looking at is employee training. So, these are very common sense and almost common sense to the point where we take them for granted and perhaps forget to do these things, but they really are key to making this work. I would say that the biggest key consideration here is to frequently wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. I mean, just, don't come into the manufacturing facility, wash your hands, and then wash them once before you leave. This is something that needs to be done over the course of your shift, so on. You want to physically distance yourself, both at work and off work time. And what we mean by that is on the work floor, we want to mitigate any congregating areas, high traffic areas, and we want to also physically distance off work time areas like your break rooms and so on. Perhaps structure your manufacturing facility so you have a one-way in and one-way out. Perhaps you want to physically distance the break room tables and indicate on those tables using some visual cues where you can sit and where you should not sit. And we all want to use proper face coverings and gloves. So the key call out here is to ensure that, not only your employees, but temporary employees, contract workers, visitors are also properly trained in COVID-19 prevention policies and have the necessary PPEs. That means, if someone comes into your business, you have a contractor, there's some visual cues there that will notify them that here are the steps we're taking to keeping you safe and keeping our employees safe. So here's a general checklist for employee training. You want to know and communicate when to seek medical attention. Know, just visually, if you see that something's wrong, ask. That's the best thing to do. Discuss the importance of hand washing frequently with your employees. Review the importance, again, of physical distancing, not only on the facility space or the floor, but also in non-floor areas like your restrooms and your break rooms and your lobbies. You want to discuss the use of proper or wearing protective equipment, gloves, masks, gowns, in some cases. So what are some insights into how we handle employees in the manufacturing facility? The first trend is we want to develop flexible staffing levels to accommodate ramp up or slowdowns. Perhaps we want to break up our break times or shifts. If you had 2 a day, perhaps you want to break that into 4 a day. So you're limiting the amount of employees that are actually in off work site areas like your break rooms. You want to create dedicated pickup and drop-off areas. I think this is critical to be able to have a drop-off area where UPS, FedEx, and so on can come and drop the items, and a way to communicate that a signature isn't required to accept those items, and the same with the pickup area to do the same. It'll mitigate the contact of inbound and outbound deliveries. So our next section is individual control measures and screening. So, in this area, the key considerations are for your employees, your contractors that come and help you in your manufacturing facility, and your guests. You want to, provide temperature and/or screening before entering the property. Screen your employees before they arrive, and I would even recommend screening your employees before they leave. Screen your contractors and guests that come in to visit your facility or work in your facility, and ensure that everyone has the required protective equipment. Just don't depend on your employee or contractor or visitor to have these protective equipments or PPEs available. Make sure you have a supply on hand, so should they not be available, you do have the ability to give these items to them to wear. And you want to screen everyone upon arrival. Sanitize and wear face covering. So if a guest arrives or contractor arrives, have a touchless kind of sanitizing station where they can sanitize their hands prior to putting on their mask before entering the facility. So the key point here is to prominently display appropriate visual cues and signage throughout the facility, to outline, proper face covering usage, and to explain your current physical distancing practices that are in use in your manufacturing facility. So what does this all mean? What's the general checklist for your employers, contractors, and guests? Again, you want to, and I understand this is redundant to many of you, but it's really important that we go over this so you make it second nature and you understand how salient these points are in implementing a effective COVID-19 guidance plan that will allow you to operate safe and clean for your employees and visitors. So you want to provide temperature checks and symptom screening, excuse me. You want to encourage hand washing and the use of hand sanitizers. Set up stations throughout your manufacturing facility that have these sanitizing products and PPEs. So an employee or a contractor can easily get to these stations and clean their hands and wear the appropriate PPEs. It wouldn't do you any good to put a station in the back left corner of your facility and hope that people could get to it to use it. So again, as a part of your assessment or your critical assessment of your facilities, look and see where those stations can be positioned in a way that's logical and makes sense to keep everyone safe and protected. You want to provide and train on proper use of personal protective equipment. Think about this. It would be easy to do in a normal situation because you'd gather everyone around and you'd have a supervisor or someone that's in charge of implementing this plan talk about this. But in this circumstance, you can't congregate and you don't want to bring people together to talk about this. So perhaps bring them together in small groups of 3 and make sure that they're distanced appropriately, and then provide them with the proper training. And do this abundantly. Just don't do it once and hope that they understand this. It's necessary that you continue this training and continue to ingrain this idea that these are the steps we now have to take as a result of COVID to keep everybody safe and everyone clean. Not just in the office, but also think about this. When people go home with their families, you also want to keep them safe and communicate frequently. It's very important that we're transparent and we communicate effectively and with purpose regarding these this guidance. So, you know, many of these key considerations are common sense, but I do want to go over them. We want to wear and provide face coverings for everyone. Again, just don't depend on someone that, you know, your employee or your visitor or your contractor to have these items available. You need to dictate the plan within your manufacturing facility, and a part of that is having these PPEs available for people to use. You want to screen and restrict entry to non-essential workers. If they're non-essential to your manufacturing facility, given the circumstances, please keep them away from the facility. You want to post signage and visual cues with your policies and guidelines, everything from, you know, a sign that says, hey, you need to wash your hands for 20 seconds, or, you know, sit in the designated areas to maintain proper physical distancing. You may have some type of visual cues on the floor that tells you, hey, this is the way in, this is the way out. These are the areas that you need to avoid. Set up potentially clean areas for the items that you use, and areas that are items that are not clean that you can designate an area that you know need to be cleaned. And you want to ensure that all required protective equipment is worn: masks, gloves, and again, gowns if needed. So here's a general checklist for manufacturing in terms of individual control measures and screening. There are protocols for entering. You know, you need to establish as a part of your worksite plan and assessment, you need to, one of the first things we need to do is establish protocols for entering work facilities. And number one to that is make sure that everybody has the appropriate PPEs, face covers for employees. Next, we need to follow, you know, physical distancing policies, 6 feet apart. Again, you know, if you need to, you know, institute some type of physical barriers, stanchions, floor visual cues or table visual cues, these are something that are necessary to you know, create this policy for physical distancing. Minimal contact with fellow employees, you know, contractors and guests, keep them apart. And avoid sharing tools. And I know that's a hard thing to do in a manufacturing facility. You know, people share tape guns, they share box knives, they share screwdrivers, they share all these things. But if all possible, and you do have stations set up, try to designate a single tape gun for an employee, or a single, you know, a box cutter for an employee, or a tool, a necessary tool to allow them to do their business. You know, you want to do more thorough cleaning and disinfection of work surfaces. And, you know, these in particular high traffic areas, if you're working with some type of assembly belt or assembly line, you want to keep these clean. And one consideration that we don't think about is, you know, you have a cleaning station, or you have cleaning stations set up in various parts of your facility. Well, you know, they are cleaning stations to keep you clean, but if you think about it, people are going to be frequenting these stations often. These stations need to be cleaned, most importantly. So if you have the Purell stations and the disinfectant wipe stations, make sure that the Purell bottles and the wet, you know, the disinfectant wipe bottles are cleaned, as well as the surfaces that they sit on. And adjust work schedules for employees and essential staff to mitigate, you know, having, you know, for example, a full workload of people. Maybe you can break that up so you have half coming in at a certain time, half coming in at an alternative time. And you want to display signage throughout the property, face coverings and physical distancing. Again, you want to have those visual cues in place to help your employees and contractors and guests understand what your policy is. So here's some insights. In the manufacturing industry, it's quite interesting. You know, Many of them are putting up strip curtains, physical barriers like plexiglass, or similar. Maybe like you see at the airport, you see a stanchion with a nylon cord that allows you to physically separate areas and individuals. Trend two, facilities are considering consulting heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or HVAC, to make sure it's adequate. And this could be as simple as making sure those filters are changed, or perhaps adding filters to an existing system. So the next area that I'd like to speak about, and this is the cleaning and disinfecting protocols within the manufacturing facility. So it really is general sanitation. It's something we should be doing even when COVID isn't above us, or hanging above us. We want to perform thorough cleaning in high traffic areas. These are the areas that are frequented the most by our employees. Again, assembly lines, workway paths to get you from one location to another. We want to equip our workstations, desks, assembly lines with the proper sanitation products. Have our disinfecting wipes and our hand sanitizers on or near areas that we work. We want to frequently disinfect commonly used areas. Again, this is inside the facility and off work facilities like your break rooms, your lobbies, and so on. And we want to maintain disinfectant stations to be operational and stocked at all times. And not only operational and stocked, I would also say you keep those stations clean as well. And when cleaning, above all, you want to make sure that the cleaning chemicals you use are approved for use against COVID-19. And you can find this information, and there is an approved list that the EPA has, and you should follow those product instructions. So to go over this, a general checklist of general sanitation, frequent cleaning and disinfection between shifts, between workstation users, availability of hand sanitizers and other cleaning supplies. You want to make sure that you're stocked up not only on the PPEs, but the hand sanitizers and other cleaning wipes and so on, and make sure that these are stocked and out at these cleaning stations and made available, and the employees understand where to find these and how to restock these items. We want to adjust our schedules to account for additional cleaning. Typically, if you only cleaned once a day before you left, maybe you want to do it 3 times a day when you start, somewhere in between a shift or a day, and sometime at the end. We want to tap into technology. This is really important. We want to try to do this as hands-free as possible. There are dispensers that, you just put your hand under and it dispenses a hand sanitizer. Want to try to go to that. Contactless entry and exits, prop a door open. Or if it's an automatic door, encourage people to go through those automatic doors. And also, some type of hands-free time card solution. Typically, punch in, punch out. There's a area on the wall where you put your time card. Don't do that any longer. Have it designated where a specific employee puts their time card in a specific place. That's distance from another employee. We want to, I know this is a difficult thing, but if we can, perhaps we want to consider rearranging the assembly line, rearranging the break room configuration to increase worker physical separation. So some of the things that again are very common sense, but I'd like to touch upon in terms of key considerations for shared items, and particularly ventilation. We want to avoid sharing items like phones, desks, computers, pens, even something as simple as a pen that you use in the facility, something that's on a string that's tied to a pole. Take that down. Give your employees pens that they can use, that can pull out of their pocket, right, and put back into their pocket. Make it their own. We don't want to share tools. We want to keep those tape guns, you know, if you can, keep them separate, those box knives, so on and so forth, and other work supplies. And as I mentioned earlier, when we set up these contactless delivery, pickup, and drop-off areas, we want to make sure that those boxes are disposed of as quickly as possible. We want to open those boxes, remove the contents, and recycle those boxes as quickly as we can. We want to designate factory floor equipment into cleaned and cleaning needed areas. So at the end of the day or before a cleaning period, we know what needs to be cleaned or what has been cleaned. It makes things a lot easier and more efficient to implement this procedure. And we want to consider, again, installing some type of high efficiency air cleaner to keep the air in our manufacturing facility as clean as possible. And again, I would contact a building maintenance person or an HVAC professional to make sure that that's done. And it's you know, the critical information about this is that I mentioned in some of our other presentations that if there is single-use collateral, you know, if there's a brochure about your company or what you do or manufacturing facility, you want to make this single-use. You know, you want to, if someone picks it up, don't put it back where they found it. Toss it away and have a trash receptacle with maybe a visual cue on there to say that, hey, you need to toss it away, or you know, you want to be able to electronically post this information. You know, QR codes have come a long way and they're very easy to use. You can scan your brochure and have a visual cue with a QR code on it and have your guest or your contractor scan that QR code. And it just doesn't have to be about your company. It could be, hey, what's the work procedure for today? What's the plan for today? And be able to incorporate that so it's on the employee's phone or it's on the contractor's phone when they're about to start work. And even for a visitor, if they have a QR code they can scan, it could give them information on what your policies are and how to stay safe when they're in your facility. So again, general checklist: clean and sanitize shared equipment between shifts, provide, you know, hand sanitizer and sanitizing wipes where workers can use them. Set up these stations. Consider improvements to upgrade your ventilation system with filters, so on, and install hands-free cleaning and disinfection devices as possible in these vulnerable areas, like entry to the building, in the pickup and drop-off areas, perhaps in areas where employees must go to get essential supplies to do their job. And here are some trends that are happening in the manufacturing as it relates to cleaning and disinfecting protocols. You know, you want to train your employees on cleaning chemicals in the workplace, particularly now because we are actually increasing the amount of cleaning chemicals we're using in the manufacturing facility, and you want to make sure that they're aware of what OSHA's hazard communication standards are. We want to use alcohol-based wipes. The key to this is the sanitizers and the disinfectant wipes that we use must be 70% alcohol or more for them to meet the COVID-19 standards for use. We want to increase our screening protocol. You know, verbal screening and appropriate language to determine whether a worker has or have had symptoms of COVID-19. It's our responsibility as owners to screen our employees and to ask them these vital questions, not only to keep them safe, but to keep the rest of your employees and your business safe. So the last area that I'd like to speak to you about is the physical distancing guidelines. So as I said in this entire presentation, many of these things are very common sense, but these are things that need to be ingrained in us and need to become second nature as we apply them in our business. We want to maintain physical distancing of at least 6 feet, again, on the work floor as well as off the work floor in lobbies and break rooms, so on and so forth. We want to stagger our employee breaks in compliance with wage and hour regulations. You know, if you normally had 2 breaks a day, for, you know, half for your employee or half for your workforce and the other half at a later time. Maybe you want to break this up into 4 breaks per day or something like that. Be creative and strategize and do what works for you. We want to design workstations. So if a workstation normally had 3 people on the manufacturing floor, perhaps reduce this to 2 and designate where these 2 people need to be when they're working from the station, perhaps one on one end, one on the other, to maintain that physical distancing. And no congregating in high traffic areas. You know, no more of kind of the water cooler, you know, scenario where everybody's standing around and talking about how their day's going. We want to avoid this at all costs. Avoid handshakes. I know this is difficult for many, but this is something that's really critical to prevent or mitigate the you know, COVID-19 from spreading. And we want to eliminate you know, the contact that we have for delivery of goods. Again, we can do that by creating pickup and drop-off areas that are contactless. So here's a checklist for physical distancing. I'll just go over this very briefly. Create alternative spaces for breaks where physical distancing is possible. We want to adjust in-person meetings. You know, if meetings are necessary. This is a perfect example of what we're doing in this webinar. Zoom and Google Meet and this technology has come a long way. And if we can conduct our meetings virtually, I believe that this is the safe and wisest way to go. If you have employee meetings that you need to conduct that you normally do on the factory floor or the manufacturing floor, schedule these meetings to be able to be conducted virtually and at home. Implement measures to physically separate employees, physical partitions, as I mentioned, plexiglass, you know, plastic strips, stanchions, so on and so forth, and create visual cues and signage. So there absolutely is no question about what your policy is and what employees and contractors and visitors must do when they enter your facility. And stagger breaks to maintain the distancing protocols. I mean, you know what the break situation is for the shifts that you run. Try to stagger these in a way that is deliberate and that keeps people safe. So key considerations, you want to clearly mark appropriate physical distancing using visual cues, signage on the floor, on freestanding pedestals or stands. You want to limit the use of shared tools, as again, this is really important in the manufacturing industry because we do share a lot of tools in the manufacturing industry. If you can designate a tool per employee, that would be optimal. And if you have these carts that you ride around in on the factory floor, you want to make sure that you don't ride around in these as a group. You want to make sure that they're designated one person per vehicle on the floor. And you want to make sure that upon riding in and exiting the vehicle that it's clean and disinfected and sanitized. You want to prop those doors open if you don't have automatic doors to eliminate the touching of the door to physically open and exit it. You want to designate the floor space with visual cues that direct your employees that, hey, this is the way in, this is the way out. It's one-way directional flow. And you want to develop peak periods for staggering and spacing. If you know your employees are due to go on break, try to stagger that break again to ensure that you're not having a congregation of workers going through that door at one time and into the break room. You want to develop a contactless pickup and delivery protocol. Again, that could be as simple as designating a space that says, here's your drop-off area, here's your pickup area. Anybody that comes to your facility to drop off or pick up, it could be some visual cues there that say, we authorize that these items can be picked up or dropped off without the need for a signature. So again, develop peak period staggering procedures, implement protocols for contactless pickup and delivery, limit the number of people riding factory floor vehicles and sharing tools, clearly mark for appropriate physical distancing in the work and rest areas, elevators, lobbies, break room facilities. The insights here, again, in terms of manufacturing, which can be challenging because we have people working generally in pretty close proximity with each other. We want to make sure that there is some type of barrier that separates the employees. You know, face shields perhaps, face shields that we can wear in the place of mask. Not only do these provide protection, but they also provide protection from anything that might be flying or you know, could be dangerous. Social distancing signage on factory floors, break rooms, lobby areas, stanchions. These are really, really important trends that are happening for manufacturers. We want to adjust in-person meetings. Again, if we could do this virtually, that would be optimal. Try not to bring your workers together in a manufacturing setting and deliver instructions in that way. So, you know, when full operations resume, you know, one thing I want to emphasize here is that, you know, we have this plan in place. When full operations resume, it doesn't mean this plan goes away. This plan is a document that we need to rely upon. We need, you know, we need to create a risk and protection plan, and we need to keep these plans alive. We need to continually look at them, amend them, and make them a part of your business. You know, as a part of this, and a part of this webinar, it's really important that we change mindsets with the employees within our companies. It really is about people and safety first, and always physically distance, always be frequent in how we wash our hands, always have and wear the appropriate PPEs, and always keep your facilities clean and sanitized. So, you know, as I close this webinar, conclude this webinar, you know, this really is about it really is a people first ethos. At the heart of this, it really is what makes us go. We want to keep our people healthy and safe. Not only the people within our manufacturing environment, but the contractors that work with us and the employees that are the guests that come to visit our facility. So operate and lead through establishing trust. The way you communicate is critical here. Be transparent and completely visible in this regard. So with that, I'm finished with the webinar for manufacturing, and I'd like to introduce Mike Curtis. Mike is a client of ours at the SBDC, and he is the owner of Boss Innovation and Marketing. He was founded in 2011, and I got to tell you, Mike just does a fantastic job of customizing disaster and safety preparedness kits for federal agencies, including the law enforcement agencies. And you know, I had a moment to talk to Mike about this, and one thing that stood out to me when I spoke with Mike is I said, Mike, what's your mission? And he said, you know, peace of mind. So that's critical to our mission. He said, supplying customers with emergency preparedness supplies with exceptional customer service. And Mike has done this in a way that has not only made his business extremely successful, but his customers extremely satisfied with the products that Mike produces. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Mike to this webinar. Mike, it's good to have you here.
You might have to unmute yourself, Mike. Sorry.
Hold on.
Okay, here we are.
All right, great, Mike. It's good to have you here. And I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. And if we could, I'd like to start out with a couple questions regarding how you are specifically implementing a worksite specific plan for your particular manufacturing business. Can you tell me the steps you're taking to create this plan to ensure that you have a safe and clean environment under these statewide guidelines that California has been great to provide us with?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Joseph, for the good words. That was very nice.
You're welcome.
So our company actually was fortunate to be considered an essential business because of the personal protection equipment that we do and some of the proprietary products that we provide to the federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. So obviously that was at the beginning of the quarantine, and you know, the whole seminar that you just went over for all the new recommendations for the safety, you know, the worksite safety that, you know, most companies need has definitely evolved from when we started to try to be an essential business and stay open. But as we started, the first thing we did was lock our front door. We closed off it to the general public. We put a sign on the door indicating that, you know, you can call us. We can make arrangements for a product that would be picked up as will call. We designated an area outside the office to do that. The second thing is that we obviously at that time required everybody to put a mask on. We started getting the sanitizer and had those all over the different locations in the building and the warehouse. We looked for employees that we knew we could probably make arrangements for them to work at home and allow them to do that through this time. One of the things that I think was very important that we needed to consider, and I think every company should look at as well, is the more vulnerable employees that you might have. You know, someone that might have respiratory issues, you know, like they talk about, you know, diabetes or whatever, whether they're 65 or older, or whether some of those are younger that have those issues, something to take into consideration, especially protecting more, you know, either have them work from home if you can, but to definitely talk to them and the rest of the employees about those concerns. In the warehouse side, we did the same thing. We have products that are being delivered each day, and then we have products that are being shipped out, you know, and freight trucks and, you know, UPS and FedEx. So we do require everybody to, you know, have a pickup zone for our products to go out, and we have the drop-off zone, and those that are in the warehouse wear gloves, masks. They're told to, you know, desanitize after touching or moving any of the packages that we have delivered, wash their hands, you know, stay that 6 feet, you know, social distancing procedures are really strong here. When we had the employees that we had work from home, then we spread everybody else here at the office out. So, you know, each person has an individual office. They're separated by that. I think, again, one of the things that we were, you know, concerned about is talking to our employees, not only of the safety issues that we have here in our operation, but what they do when they leave, you know, because if they're out with parties or whatever else, which there's, you know, does happen, they could bring it back to the office and everybody will be out of work. And that was one of our biggest concerns.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. You know, I appreciate those comments, and I think the viewers as well as the panelists agree that Mike is doing a great job of implementing these worksite specific plans within his business, and he's really a great example of how this should be done. And we want to thank you for your participation, Mike, in this webinar.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to join you.
I think with that, Katrina, I believe that we've concluded this webinar.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for joining today. And thank you, Mike Curtis. I really, really appreciate your insight and feedback and Joseph's presentation. To everybody that's been on, thank you for joining. In the chat, I do have the Dropbox where you can find all of the presentations that we have been going over today for the statewide industry guidances, as well as the recordings for all of these webinars. So thank you guys. And if you want to join us in 10 minutes, we will be going over the logistical industry next at 1 o'clock. So thank you, and we'll see you in 10 minutes.